Hour 24. He is not supposed to be alive. The desert breathes heat and dust across the broken silence, and somewhere between the fading light and the weight of the air, a man lies still while a dog refuses to move. Staff Sergeant Ethan Cole feels the world slipping in quiet pieces, not all at once, but slowly, like sand through an open hand, each second stretching longer than the last as the sky above him burns a dull orange fading into ash-gray twilight. The kind of sky that doesn't promise tomorrow, only distance. His body is heavy, not from sleep, but from something deeper, something that pulls him down into the earth beneath him, and every breath he takes feels thinner than the one before, like the air itself is running out of patience. Around him, the combat zone has gone eerily quiet, no voices, no engines, just the low whisper of wind dragging grains of dust across hardened ground, tapping softly against his gear, against the worn fabric of his uniform, against the stillness that now defines everything. And beside him, unmoving but not unfeeling, stands Rex. The German Shepherd does not whimper. He does not pace. His posture is locked, steady, eyes scanning the horizon with a focus that feels almost human, amber catching the last light like small, burning lanterns in the growing dark. His coat, sable and shadowed, lifts slightly with the breeze, and his ears flick once, twice, catching sounds too distant for any man to hear, but he does not leave. Not now. Not ever. Ethan tries to speak, but the words stay somewhere behind his teeth, lost in the dryness of his throat, and instead there is only a faint exhale, a sound that barely carries, yet Rex hears it. He always does. The dog shifts just slightly, closing the small distance between them, lowering his body closer to Ethan's side, not touching at first, just near enough to guard, to anchor, to say without words that the line between life and loss has not been crossed yet. The scent of heated metal and dust hangs thick in the air, mixed with something quieter, something almost forgotten, like the memory of rain that hasn't touched this land in months, and above it all, the sky deepens, stars beginning to break through one by one, distant and indifferent. Time is no longer measured in minutes. It is measured in breaths, in heartbeats, in the quiet decisions no one sees. Ethan's vision flickers, the edges darkening, but in that narrowing frame, there is still one constant shape, one presence that refuses to fade, and it is not the war, not the sky, not the fear. It is the dog. Rex stands there like something unspoken, something promised long before this moment, before the heat, before the silence, before the long road that led them here, and even as the night settles in, even as the world grows colder and more distant, one truth holds steady in the stillness. The man may be slipping away, but the dog is not letting him go. Hour 0 does not arrive with a warning. It arrives with a shift in the air, a subtle wrongness that only those who have lived long enough in danger learn to recognize, and Staff Sergeant Ethan Cole feels it before he understands it. Standing beside the convoy as the late afternoon sun hangs low over the desert, casting long shadows that stretch like quiet omens across the hard, packed ground, the heat still clinging to everything, pressing against his skin, settling into his lungs with every breath, while the distant hum of engines and the soft crunch of boots on gravel form a rhythm that feels almost normal, almost safe, and that is what makes it dangerous. Rex walks at his side, steady, controlled, every movement deliberate, his nose catching the invisible threads of scent carried by the wind, ears twitching at frequencies no human ear can follow, and there is something in the way he pauses, just for a fraction of a second, that Ethan notices without fully registering, a hesitation so small it could be dismissed, but it is not dismissed, not by a man who has learned to trust the instincts of the dog more than his own thoughts. The horizon shimmers under the weight of the heat, the sky pale and endless, and for a moment everything feels suspended, like the world is holding its breath, and then it passes, or at least it seems to, and Ethan exhales slowly, adjusting the strap of his gear, glancing down at Rex with a quiet nod that carries years of unspoken understanding between them. They have been through training fields and long nights, through silence and noise, through moments where Trust was not a choice but a necessity, and in those moments Rex had never failed him, not once. A voice crackles faintly over the radio. Routine check, routine response, nothing out of place, nothing urgent, and yet the air still feels different, heavier, like something unseen has settled into the space between seconds. Rex stops again. This time it is clearer. His body stiffens, head tilting slightly, nose lifting as if reaching for something just beyond reach, and a low, almost inaudible sound vibrates in his chest. Not a bark, not a growl, something in between. Something that does not belong to training manuals or commands. Ethan's hand lowers instinctively, brushing against the fur along Rex's neck, grounding both of them in the present, and he follows the line of the dog's gaze out toward the open stretch ahead, where nothing appears to move, where the land lies still and empty under the fading light. "What is it, boy?" he murmurs, his voice calm, steady, but there is a shift inside him now, a quiet alertness rising, the kind that does not come from fear but from recognition. Rex does not respond with movement. He does not advance. He does not retreat. He simply stands, locked between decision and instinct, and in that stillness there is a message Ethan has learned to hear without words. Something is wrong. The wind changes direction, carrying with it a faint scent that does not belong to dust or metal or heat, something foreign, something that should not be there, and Ethan's breath slows, his senses sharpening as the edges of the world seem to come into focus all at once. Every sound clearer, every shadow deeper, every second stretching longer than it should. He glances once more at Rex, and in those amber eyes there is no hesitation, no doubt, only certainty, and it is in that moment, before anything breaks, before anything shifts beyond control, that Ethan understands the truth that will follow them into the next 24 hours. The dog knew first. He always does. Hour 3 settles in without mercy, not loud, not sudden, but heavy in a way that presses against the ribs and makes every breath feel earned, and Staff Sergeant Ethan Cole is no longer standing, no longer scanning the horizon with controlled focus. He is down now. The world tilted, the ground closer than it should be, his back against the rough, sun-baked earth that still holds the heat of the day like a memory that refuses to fade, and above him the sky has shifted fully into night, deep and endless, scattered with stars that offer no direction, no comfort, only distance. The convoy is gone, or at least it feels that way, the familiar sounds of engines and voices replaced by a silence so complete it almost hums, broken only by the whisper of wind dragging across the open land, carrying grains of dust that tap softly against his sleeve, his gear, his skin, grounding him in a reality that feels thinner with each passing minute. His radio sits useless beside him, a quiet piece of metal and plastic that offers no reply, no signal, no reassurance that anyone is coming, and for the first time since this began, the truth settles in with a weight that cannot be ignored. They are alone. Not just physically, but in the deeper sense, the kind that stretches time and turns minutes into something longer, something uncertain. Ethan shifts slightly, a small movement, but it costs him more than it should, and he exhales slowly, steadying himself, holding on to what remains of control, because that is what training teaches, not how to avoid the moment, but how to stay inside it without breaking. Beside him, Rex lowers himself fully now, his body close, pressed just enough to share warmth, to anchor, to remind, his breathing slow and even, a quiet rhythm that cuts through the silence like a metronome for survival, steady, unchanging, dependable. There is no panic in the dog, no confusion, only presence, and that presence fills the space where fear might otherwise grow. Ethan turns his head slightly, just enough to see him, the outline of sable fur against the dim light, the faint glint of amber eyes still scanning, still working, still searching for something unseen. And in that gaze there is a kind of certainty that does not need explanation. Rex knows this is not over. The temperature begins to drop as the hours stretch forward, the desert releasing its heat into the dark, and the air grows thinner, sharper, carrying with it a chill that settles into Ethan's bones, slow but persistent, and without thinking, Rex shifts closer. closing the gap entirely now, his side against Ethan's, sharing what warmth he can, an instinct older than training, older than commands, something built into the very fabric of what he is. Ethan's hand moves, not quickly, not easily, but it finds its way to the dog's neck, fingers brushing through coarse fur, grounding himself in something real, something alive, and, for a moment, the weight of everything lifts just slightly, replaced by something quieter, something steadier. He tries the radio again, a soft call into the empty frequency, his voice controlled but thinner now, stretching across miles that offer no answer, and when only static returns, he closes his eyes briefly, not in surrender, but in calculation, in the quiet acceptance of what must come next. Rex lifts his head suddenly, ears sharp, body tightening, and there it is again, that shift in the air, that signal without sound, and Ethan feels it too, not with his ears, but somewhere deeper, a subtle change that pulls his attention outward, toward the darkness beyond what he can see. He does not ask this time. He does not question. Because he already knows. Whatever comes next, it will not be found by looking. It will be found by trusting the one who has never been wrong. Hour 6 does not announce itself with noise. It arrives in the quiet shift between cold and colder, when the desert stops holding on to the last warmth of the day and finally lets it go, and Staff Sergeant Ethan Cole feels it first in his hands. A slow stiffness creeping into his fingers, then deeper, settling into his chest where each breath becomes more deliberate, more measured, as if the air itself now requires permission to enter his lungs. The night has deepened into something vast and indifferent, the stars sharper now, brighter, scattered across the sky like distant witnesses that do not intervene, and the wind has changed, no longer carrying heat, but a thin, cutting chill that moves across the open ground in long, quiet currents. Rex adjusts before Ethan even realizes he needs it, shifting his body closer, pressing along Ethan's side with quiet precision, not clumsy, not desperate, but intentional, as if he understands exactly where warmth is needed most. His breathing steady, his presence unwavering, a living barrier between the man and the slow pull of the cold. There is no command given, no signal exchanged, just instinct meeting. Need in a way that feels older than training, older than war, something built into the silent agreement between them. Ethan exhales slowly, his breath visible now in the air, faint and fleeting, and he tilts his head just enough to rest it slightly closer to Rex's shoulder, not fully, not surrendering, but accepting the support in a way he would never admit out loud. And for a moment the world narrows again, not into darkness, but into something smaller, something manageable, a space defined by shared breath and quiet endurance. The radio remains silent, a constant reminder of distance, of how far away help might be or might not be, and Ethan's thoughts drift, not into panic, but into memory, into fragments of training days where commands were repeated until they became reflex, until they lived in muscle and instinct rather than conscious thought, and among those fragments, one phrase surfaces with quiet clarity. Never leave your partner behind. He does not remember when it was said, or who said it, only that it was repeated enough to become truth, not just instruction, and now, lying here under a sky that offers no answers, he realizes that Rex has never treated it as anything less. His lips part slightly, dry, his voice barely more than a breath as it slips into the cold air. "Do not leave me," he murmurs, not as an order, not as a command, but as something closer to a memory spoken aloud, something that belongs to both of them. Rex's ears flick at the sound, his head turning just enough to look at Ethan, and in that glance there is recognition, not of words, but of meaning, of the bond that has been reinforced through every shared mile, every silent understanding. The dog does not respond with movement, not yet, but something shifts inside him, something subtle but undeniable, like a decision forming beneath the surface. Time stretches again, minutes folding into something harder to measure, and Ethan's awareness drifts at the edges, pulling him toward a place where the cold feels less sharp, where the silence feels softer, and yet through it all, one thing remains constant. Rex does not sleep. He does not relax. His eyes remain open, scanning, listening, calculating in ways no one ever taught him, and somewhere beyond the reach of human senses, something calls to him, something distant. But real, something that does not belong to the stillness of this place. And then, without warning, without hesitation, Rex lifts his head higher, his body tightening with purpose, and for the first time since the night began, he shifts his weight away from Ethan, not fully leaving, not yet, but preparing, as if standing at the edge of a choice that will change everything. Ethan feels it even through the haze, that subtle withdrawal, that small distance forming, and though his eyes struggle to stay open, though his body resists every attempt to hold on, a single thought surfaces, clear and fragile at once. This is the moment. Not the end, but the turning point, the place where trust must carry what strength no longer can. And Rex, silent as ever, begins to decide. Hour 11 arrives like a whisper that does not belong to the night, slipping between breaths, between thoughts, between the fragile space where consciousness begins to loosen its grip, and Staff Sergeant Ethan Cole feels himself drifting, not fully gone, not fully present. Suspended in that quiet place where memory and reality blur into something softer, something less defined. The cold no longer bites the same way. It settles instead, dull and distant, like a sensation remembered rather than felt, and the weight of his body seems to fade into the ground beneath him, as if the earth itself is slowly claiming him without urgency, without force. His hand, still resting against Rex's fur, feels heavier now, harder to move, but he keeps it there, anchored to the one thing that has not changed, the one constant in a world that has become uncertain and thin. Rex remains still for a moment longer, just long enough to feel that contact, to register it, to understand it in the way only he can, not through language, but through presence, through the subtle shift in breathing, the slowing rhythm of a body that is beginning to let go. His ears flick once more, catching something far beyond the reach of human hearing, a faint echo carried on the wind, distant and fragile, but real, and his head lifts higher, eyes narrowing slightly as he locks onto that invisible thread. It is not close. It is not clear. But it is enough. Ethan's lips move again, barely forming the shape of words, his voice thinner now, fragile almost. Lost to the air as it leaves him. Do not leave me, he repeats, softer this time, not asking, not commanding, simply remembering, and in that moment, something shifts completely. Rex pulls away. Not abruptly, not with panic, but with purpose, his body rising from the ground in one smooth motion, the warmth he had shared with Ethan fading instantly into the cold night air. For a fraction of a second, he pauses, looking down at the man beside him, amber eyes steady, unreadable, holding something deeper than instinct, something closer to choice. He could stay. Everything in him has been trained to stay, to guard, to protect, to never abandon the one he was assigned to. But something else is calling now, something beyond the immediate, beyond the visible, something that requires movement, distance, risk. He steps back. One step, then another. The space between them grows, small at first, then undeniable, and Ethan feels it even through the haze, the absence of warmth, the shift in presence, and though his eyes struggle to open, though his mind drifts at the edges, a flicker of awareness breaks through. Rex is leaving. Not in fear. Not in failure. But in purpose. The dog turns, his body aligning with the direction only he understands, nose lifting once more to catch that faint, distant signal carried on the wind, and then he moves, silent and controlled, disappearing into the darkness beyond the reach of sight. Each step deliberate, each motion guided by something no human could follow. The desert swallows him quickly, the night closing in behind him as if he was never there at all, leaving only the empty space where his warmth had been. Ethan lies still, the cold settling in again, deeper now, heavier, the silence returning in full, and for a moment, it feels like the world has shifted in a way that cannot be undone. The one constant is gone. The presence that held the line between him and the dark has stepped away. And yet, somewhere beneath the fading awareness, beneath the quiet pull of exhaustion, A single thought remains, fragile but unbroken. Rex did not leave. He chose to go. Hour 15 does not feel like a continuation of time. It feels like an absence of it, as if the hours between have folded inward and disappeared, leaving Staff Sergeant Ethan Cole suspended in a quiet that is deeper than silence, a place where sound no longer reaches in the same way, and even the wind seems distant, like something happening far away from where he lies. The cold has settled fully now, no longer sharp, no longer biting, but heavy, pressing into him with a steady, unrelenting weight that dulls everything it touches, and his breathing has slowed, each inhale softer, each exhale thinner. Like the body is beginning to forget its own rhythm. The ground beneath him feels less real, less solid, as if he is drifting just above it, caught between staying and slipping, and the sky above has turned into something vast and endless, the stars no longer sharp points of light but blurred, distant shapes that flicker at the edges of his vision. Rex is gone. The space beside him remains empty, the warmth long faded, replaced by the full presence of the night, and for a moment that stretches beyond measurement, there is nothing to hold on to except the faint echo of memory, the feel of coarse fur under his fingers, the steady rise and fall of breath that is no longer there. Ethan's hand shifts slightly, a small movement that takes more effort than it should, searching for something that is no longer within reach, and when it finds only cold air, it stills again, resting where it falls, as if accepting the absence without protest. His mind drifts, not into fear, but into fragments, pieces of time that surface without order, without sequence, flashes of training fields under bright morning light, the sound of commands carried across open ground, the weight of a leash in his hand. And beside him, always beside him, the steady presence of Rex, younger then, faster, but already the same in the ways that mattered, already watching, already understanding. Stay, he had said once, voice firm, controlled, a command repeated until it became reflex, and Rex had obeyed, holding position no matter what moved around him, no matter what distractions pulled at the edges of his focus. Stay meant do not leave. Stay meant hold the line. But there had been another lesson, quieter, less spoken, woven into the spaces between commands, something that was not taught in words, but in repetition, in trust, in the long hours where man and dog moved as one. Never leave your partner behind. The memory settles over him now, soft and distant, and for a moment, a faint confusion stirs beneath the haze, a question that does not fully form but lingers at the edge of thought. Rex left. The idea feels incomplete, like a sentence missing its end, and even as the thought begins to fade, something shifts in the air, subtle at first, almost imagined, a vibration so faint it could be mistaken for memory, but it grows, slowly, steadily, carried across the distance on a thread of sound that does not belong to the desert night. Ethan's eyes struggle to open, lids heavy, vision blurred, but he tries, pulling himself back from that drifting edge, because somewhere, deep beneath the exhaustion, something recognizes the change. It is not silence anymore. It is not emptiness. The air itself feels different, alive with a distant rhythm that builds with each passing second, low at first, then stronger, a steady pulse that presses against the stillness and begins to break it apart. Far beyond the reach of his sight, beyond the dark stretch of land that surrounds him, something is moving, something is coming, and though he cannot see it, though he cannot fully understand it, one truth settles quietly into place, stronger than doubt, stronger than the fading pull of sleep. Rex did not leave him behind. He went to bring something back. Hour 18 does not arrive gently. It breaks through the quiet like a distant heartbeat growing stronger, pushing against the stillness that has held the desert in its grip, and Staff Sergeant Ethan Cole feels it before he fully hears it, a vibration beneath him, subtle but real, threading its way through the ground, through the air, through the fragile space where awareness flickers and fades. His eyes open just enough to catch fragments of the world, blurred shapes, shifting shadows, the sky above no longer empty but alive with something distant, something moving, and the sound follows, low at first, almost imagined, then building. Steady and undeniable, a rhythm that does not belong to wind or silence. It is coming closer. Each second stretches as the sound grows, filling the space that had once been hollow, replacing absence with presence, and Ethan's breath catches slightly, not from strength, but from recognition, the kind that rises instinctively, beyond thought, beyond doubt. Help is near. Somewhere beyond the darkness, beyond the stretch of land he cannot see, something has changed. Something has answered a call he never had the strength to make. The air shifts again, stirred now by more than just the night wind, carrying with it a faint scent that feels out of place, mechanical, distant, but real, and for a moment, everything narrows into that one truth. He is not alone anymore. But even as the realization settles, another thought rises with it, quieter, sharper, cutting through the haze with unexpected clarity. Rex. The name does not form on his lips, but it moves through him, steady and certain, because this does not happen without reason, without cause, without something leading it here. The dog knew. He always knew. Ethan's head turns slightly, the effort slow, deliberate, as if moving through water instead of air, and his gaze drifts across the dark stretch of ground beside him, the place where Rex had been, where warmth once existed, now empty, and for a brief moment. Doubt flickers, small but persistent. What if he does not come back? The thought lingers just long enough to be felt, then fades beneath something stronger, something rooted deeper than fear. Rex does not break promises. The sound above grows louder now, no longer distant, no longer uncertain, a steady pulse that fills the sky, and faint beams of light begin to cut through the darkness, sweeping slowly across the ground, searching, scanning, reaching into the spaces where shadows once hid everything. The desert responds to it, dust lifting, air shifting, the stillness breaking apart under the presence of something larger, something undeniable. Ethan's breathing changes, not stronger, not yet, but steadier, as if his body recognizes what his mind cannot fully hold on to, and for a moment, he lets go of the effort to think, to question, to understand, and simply listens, grounding himself in the sound that now surrounds him. And then, through the blur, through the shifting light and shadow, a shape appears at the edge of his vision, low to the ground, moving with a familiar rhythm, not hurried, not frantic, but determined. Steady in a way that feels almost unreal after the long stretch of absence. Rex returns. His silhouette cuts through the light, sable for catching faint highlights as he moves closer, slower than before, but unbroken, his body carrying the marks of distance, of effort, of a path. Taken and completed, and yet his eyes remain the same, focused, unwavering, locked onto Ethan as if nothing else in the world exists. He does not stop until he reaches him. He does not hesitate. He lowers himself once more beside Ethan, pressing close, reclaiming the space he left behind, bringing warmth back into the cold, bringing presence back into the silence. And in that moment, as the sound above fills the sky and the light grows stronger, one truth settles with quiet certainty. He did not leave to abandon. He left to fulfill the promise. Hour 23 comes with light that does not belong to the desert, cutting through the night in long, sweeping beams that move across the ground with purpose, searching, finding, holding, and Staff Sergeant Ethan Cole feels it even before he fully sees it. The shift from darkness to something brighter, something real, pressing against his closed eyes until they open just enough to let it in, a blur at first, then sharper, shapes forming where there had only been emptiness before. The sound above is no longer distant now, it is immediate, powerful, filling the air with a steady rhythm that pushes back the silence completely, and the wind it carries stirs the dust around him, lifting it in soft spirals that catch the light and scatter it across the ground like fragments of something breaking apart. Rex does not flinch at the noise, does not retreat from the movement. He stays exactly where he is, pressed close to Ethan's side, his body firm, grounded, a constant point in a world that is shifting again, and his eyes remain locked on the man beside him. Not on the lights, not on the sound, but on the one thing that matters. Ethan's breath catches, shallow but present, and he turns his head slightly toward the warmth beside him, toward the presence he thought he had lost, and in that small movement there is recognition, not spoken, not fully understood, but felt. A quiet realization that settles deeper than thought. Rex came back. The beams of light sweep over them again, slower now, more deliberate, pausing as if something has been found, and the space around them fills with motion that is controlled, careful, purposeful, figures moving through the edge of the light. Voices carried faintly through the air, steady, focused, close enough to be real, but still distant enough to feel like something half-remembered. Ethan does not try to speak. He does not reach out. The effort is beyond him now, and yet something inside him holds steady, anchored by the presence at his side, by the warmth that has returned, by the quiet certainty that this moment has been earned, not by chance, but by something far more deliberate. Rex shifts slightly, not away, but closer, his body pressing in with the same quiet precision as before, sharing what warmth he can, holding the line between the cold and the life that still remains, and though his movements are slower now, though there is a heaviness in the way he settles, he does not falter, he does not break, he simply stays. A hand reaches into the edge of Ethan's vision, gloved, steady, careful, followed by another, shapes moving around him with purpose, voices clearer now, grounded, human, and yet through it all, Ethan's focus does not shift far. It remains anchored to the one presence that has never wavered, the one constant through every hour that has passed. His fingers move, barely, brushing once more against Rex's fur, and this time the contact is faint, fleeting, but enough to close the space that had opened, enough to confirm what had always been true. Rex lifts his head slightly at the touch, ears softening, eyes lowering for just a moment, not in rest, but in acknowledgement, as if receiving something unspoken, something that does not need to be repeated. The light grows stronger, the voices closer, the world returning in pieces, and as the moment stretches between what was and what will be, one quiet truth settles into the space they share. Not all rescues are loud. Some arrive on 4 legs, leave without a word, and come back with everything. Hour 24 does not feel like an ending, it feels like a quiet return, as if something that was nearly lost has been gently placed back where it belongs, and Staff Sergeant Ethan Cole drifts at the edge of awareness as the world rebuilds itself around him. Piece by piece, sound by sound, light by light, the distant rhythm above now steady and constant, no longer searching but holding, no longer uncertain but sure. The cold that once pressed into him begins to loosen its grip, replaced by warmth that does not come from the desert, but from careful hands, from presence, from the simple fact that he is no longer alone in the way he was before, and though his body remains heavy, though each breath still feels measured and fragile, there is something different now. Something that settles deeper than the surface, something that does not need strength to exist. Rex remains beside him. Not standing now, but lowered, his body finally easing into the ground as if the long-held tension has begun to release, his breathing slower, heavier, yet steady, always steady, and his eyes, those same amber eyes that never left, softened slightly, no longer scanning the horizon, no longer searching for what might come next, but resting, just for a moment, in the quiet that follows purpose fulfilled. Ethan's hand moves again, barely, fingers brushing once more through the fur at Rex's neck, and this time the contact lingers, not out of effort, but out of something simpler, something closer to peace, and though his voice does not rise, though no words are spoken, the meaning passes between them all the same, carried in that small touch, in that shared breath, in that moment that belongs only to them. Around them, movement continues, voices steady, controlled, guiding what comes next, but it feels distant now, secondary, like something that exists outside the space they have held together through the long hours of darkness, and for Ethan, that space is enough. More than enough, because it holds the one truth that mattered through it all. He was never left behind. The sky above begins to shift again, the first faint hints of dawn touching the horizon, a pale line of light breaking through the edge of night, soft and gradual, not demanding attention, but offering it quietly, the way all true things arrive, without force, without noise. The desert, once silent and empty, begins to breathe again, the air changing, the stillness lifting, and as the light grows, it reveals not just the ground beneath them, not just the figures moving with purpose, but the path that led here, unseen, unspoken. Carried out in silence by something that did not need recognition to act. Rex's head lowers slightly, just enough to rest closer, his body finally allowing what it had refused for so long, not surrender, but rest, the kind that comes only after a promise has been kept, and though he does not close his eyes fully, though he remains aware, present, there is a softness to him now that had not been there before, a quiet release that speaks louder than any action. Ethan's breathing steadies, not strong, not yet, but enough to hold on, enough to continue, and as the light of morning spreads slowly across the land, one final truth settles into the silence between them, simple, unspoken, and complete. Some promises are not made with words, and some heroes never need to be told to stay. In this deeply moving cinematic journey, a U.S. Marine and his loyal German Shepherd K9 face the harsh reality of a combat zone where time is measured not in minutes, but in breaths, and survival depends not only on strength but on trust. As the hours unfold, the Marine finds himself isolated in the vast desert, his body weakening while the silence around him grows heavier. Yet beside him stands his K9 partner, unwavering, alert, and driven by instinct that goes beyond training. This story captures the essence of animal stories through the unbreakable bond between man and dog, where loyalty becomes action and instinct becomes salvation, as the night deepens and the cold sets in. The German Shepherd makes a choice that defines the heart of all great animal stories, leaving not out of abandonment, but out of purpose, guided by something unseen yet undeniable. Across miles of darkness, the K9 tracks what no human can sense, embodying the quiet heroism that defines the most powerful animal stories, while the Marine drifts between memory and reality, holding on to the belief that he has not been left behind. As distant rescue begins to take form, the return of the dog transforms the moment into something greater than survival, revealing a promise fulfilled not through words, but through action. This is where animal stories rise beyond simple narrative and become a reflection of faith, resilience, and silent sacrifice, showing how a K9 can carry both duty and devotion without hesitation. As dawn approaches and the world slowly returns, the Marine is not saved by chance, but by the unwavering loyalty of his companion, proving that in the most critical moments, the smallest act of trust can bridge the distance between life and loss. And in the end, this unforgettable story stands as one of those rare animal stories that remind us that true heroes do not always speak, but they never leave. Character 1. White American Marine male age 34. Rugged face, short dark hair, hazel eyes, front-facing portrait, wearing dusty combat uniform, tactical vest, dog tags, realistic lighting, desert background, serious expression. Cinematic, no cartoon, no CGI, no illustration. Character 2. German Shepherd K9, 5 years old, full body visible. Sable coat black and tan, amber eyes, muscular build, alert stance, ears erect, standing on desert terrain, realistic lighting, cinematic detail, no cartoon, no CGI, no illustration.